So it's a pleasure to be here. My name, as said, was Ilan Rubash. I'm at Carnegie Mellon University. And one of the exciting things that you learned this morning is that self-tracking has immense promise. That promise that it has a whole lot to do with culture, with sociology, with personal empowerment. But it also has to do with information. Because at the heart of self-tracking is the idea that we can, in a truly authentic way, collect information, collect the right information, which means measure it, store that information, and then make meaning from that information. And meaning making, of course, not only has to happen at a grounded level, but it has to yield interpretations that we can share. And we can share with our coaches, we can share with our physicians and our families and loved ones. So in fact, information is at the heart of one of the enabling technologies we need for self-tracking. Now, this session is about innovation. And although innovation is key to self-tracking, it doesn't fulfill the promise of self-tracking, as we all well know. So here we're going to talk about this key enabler, innovation, and in particular about the technologies that are in the hardware side and in the app side and in the data sharing side fundamental to allowing a kind of future to be born in self-tracking. The kind of future that I'm interested in is how can technology have an authentic role in massively scaling the efficacy and the overall scale, the spread of self-tracking, so that it becomes a major movement in all countries. So that's the question that we ask. To ask that question and to derive answers for that, we have a wonderful panel today. I'm going to introduce them one by one and have them just tell you a little bit about their company. Then I have a couple of general questions for them in the panel, and then we will turn up the house lights and have you all ask questions. So prepare your questions. We'll make sure that we can see you at that point. The first person I want to introduce is Shridhar Iyengar. So Shridhar, come on up. Shridhar is co-founder and CTO of Automatrix, which is a medical device company that invents, designs, manufactures blood glucose meters and biosensors for people with diabetes. And Shridhar has a PhD from the University of Cambridge as a Marshall Scholar. If you could just go ahead and have a seat. It's okay to sit down. I'll do the same. And just tell us a couple of minutes about the device that your company makes and your vision.
Okay. Well, we're about 11 years old, and we got into the space of diabetes monitoring. So we made a whole host of devices, traditional glucose meters that you can buy in retail under various different store brand names over the years. And then something happened about 4 or 5 years ago when Apple came out with their iPhone. And we looked at this and we said, wait a minute. This has the potential to change healthcare. And we said, well, we're in diabetes, so what can we do to capitalize on this innovation? So we embarked on a project to make a glucose monitor that actually plugs directly into your iPhone. And so this is a product that is sold under the brand name of IBG Star via our partners, Sanofi Aventis, who make one of the largest producers of insulin. And it's a product that what I like to say is basically it puts readings into context. So if you have diabetes, you take a blood sugar measurement. Number is only a number is only a number. But when you combine it with something like an app, you can annotate that data. You can put it into context. You can say, well, what did I eat? How many calories did I have? Did I exercise? You can look at your trends over time, and you can email this data, and you can have connectivity. So for us, this is a game changer, and hopefully at the end of this session, you'll see what we're talking about.
All right, thank you, Shridhar. The next person I want to introduce is Alex Frommeier. So Alex, come on up. Alex is founder and CEO of Beam Technologies, which is based in Louisville, Kentucky. And he was previously the founding CEO of Inven, LLC, and has a master's degree in engineering from the University of Louisville. Right. And why don't you say a couple of words about your Beam brush?
Sure. So our company is a bit unique in the grander digital health scope. We've developed the first app-connected toothbrush. So it's a manual toothbrush with a sensor embedded inside of it for mapping brushing behavior, and then using that in a variety of environments, from personal management, similar to how you use a Fitbit or a Zeo sleep tracker today, but also in the gamification environment and actually incentivizing health.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Next, let's introduce Chris Robbins. Welcome, Chris. Chris is CEO of Body Media, and prior to joining Body Media, she was CEO of Philips Oral Healthcare, and before that, 17 years at SC Johnson. Yep. She has a marketing degree, a degree in marketing and finance from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and an MBA from Marquette University.
Yep.
And go ahead and tell us a little bit about Body Media, please.
Sure. Body Media, similar to Automatrix, has been around for about 13 years. And we're, kind of as our name suggests, Body Media, a multi-sensor technology that helps people understand lifestyle management issues as it relates to various healthcare issues. Today, the kind of application that we've commercialized is in the obesity and weight management sector. Over the years, we've looked at a number of different other healthcare issues, and we'll be expanding beyond our current vector today. We do it in kind of a unique way. Like I said, it's a multi-sensor, so we start with an accelerometer, which is fairly common, but we add on to that 3 physiological on-body sensors. So it's a product that has to be worn in contact with the skin on the upper arm. And we're actually very interested because in about first quarter of next year, we're actually launching to kind of change the use case. This is a durable, it takes a commitment, both a financial commitment and a physical commitment, but we're launching a disposable product in this space. Completely different use cases to get people engaged in very short snippets of understanding their health and their lifestyle.
Excellent. There's already a sneak preview of the technology product roadmap as it goes into the future, so thank you. Wonderful. Our last member of our panel is David Vensicle, so welcome. David is CEO of Asthma Policy in Madison, Wisconsin, and he's a medical anthropologist and an epidemiologist and co-founder and CEO of Asthma Policy. And he was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health, and he was Epidemic Intelligence Service Officer at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This sounds like something out of a movie. David received his PhD in medical anthropology from the University of Arizona in 2004. Can you tell us a little bit about Asthma Policy?
Yeah, thanks. So Asthma Policy is essentially born out of my career doing work in asthma epidemiology and trying to track and understand where and when people are using their inhaled medications. We're best known for building a little sensor that grabs onto the end of an asthma medication or a COPD medication and then tracks the time and location where that medicine is used. And we do that so that we can learn about the day-to-day management and burden of asthma in the community, help people do a better job of achieving control of the disease, and then giving physicians and other folks, caregivers and care managers, a way to identify who's doing well and who's doing not so that we can improve outcomes and reduce costs.
Thank you, David. So we have 4 leaders of very innovative companies who are defining what tracking can happen in the future because they're helping to define what information is gathered and how is it presented back to the user. Now, we're going to try and chart the future, which is always fun. And let me just start with you, David, because you're right here next to me. And you're an anthropologist and an epidemiologist, and you're an entrepreneur and innovator. So let's start by being a little bit anthropological, if we may. We've talked about a lot of communities of practice this morning, everything from people at home to families to technologists and the relationship technologists have with people at home to healthcare specialists. And my question has to do with early adoption of what you see as the roadmap of future self-tracking technologies. Who is going to adopt these in an anthropological sense? Which communities are the first adopters? And who's threatened by this? Who is it that's going to try and stop this from happening?
Great question. So I was just thinking about today, hearing all of the talks, and I'm really pleased to be here and be a part of this event. But what struck me this morning is that the failure, I think, to actually kind of come up with any kind of boundary object out of quantified self and self-tracking, some kind of information object that effectively allows different groups of people to, that's plastic and allows different groups of people to share and kind of understand and make sense of a single piece of information and experience. I'm not sure that there are early adopters. I think it's been widely adopted already in sort of an interesting way. I think there's a long history of self-experimentation in medicine and in respiratory disease in particular. There's a father-son duo, the Haldanes, who conducted a ton of experiments on themselves, fairly noxious experiments on their respiratory system, and even wrote things like on a view of myself as my own rabbit, right? And in which they sort of touted the benefits of experimenting on themselves as though, I've never met a rabbit that cooperated with me, right? So I think that I think we'll see as we kind of mature this work. I think we'll see types of information really emerge that allow groups of practice physicians, health technologists, patients, and so forth to cooperate better and to make more meaning out of the information that's being collected.
You also seem to be identifying risk takers, people who will be
I
willing to
think-
stick their neck out.
I think there is kind of a spirit of adventure about the whole thing that hasn't really been celebrated enough.
So I got to push you on the second part of the question too. Do you see communities that are threatened by this?
Yeah, I do. I think there's concern about, there's too much concern about the quality and reliability of data from the professional side. In a lot of cases, we're supplanting instruments like questionnaires and asthma epi, which, for example, we know are to be horribly inaccurate and unreliable. So when it comes time to test sort of new technologies against the gold standard, the daily diary in asthma, it is a little bit ridiculous. We know that something like 95% of those diaries are fabricated or just completely erroneous. And so to have that be set out as the gold standard against which we're going to test new kinds of information gathering is unfortunate to me.
Wise words to keep in mind next time somebody says, well, this isn't as good as a gold standard. We can ask about just how much of a gold standard we have. Very good. Chris, your product and your company has a great deal to do about things like weight change, which relate to behavioral change pretty specifically.
Yep.
And so there's two sides to that coin. There's both the question of accumulating data and visualizing it in a way that people could make change. But then there's the interesting next question, which is, can behavioral change actually happen? What's your view about how your technology will enable real behavioral change, and how will the roadmap of what you're sensing will occur in the future, without giving away too many of your company's secrets?
Sure.
How will that cause even better behavioral change in the future?
Well, I think I'm going to build a little bit what he said, that we've been at this for 13 years, and in 1999, people weren't putting cell phones in their pockets on a regular basis, let alone thinking about putting sensors on their body together, who knows what, right? And I would say, probably in the last 3 to 5 years, that's changed thanks to the great Apple company here in the Valley, in the Bay Area. And so we're kind of riding that same kind of change in people's mindset. But your question about where does this technology go in affecting behavior change, we have seen that, we believe that it's real data, and data that is transitioned into meaningful information. And we've shown in a number of long-term independent outcome studies that have been done, funded by the NIH and various other groups, where when our technology is incorporated in either self-guided self-guided programs to manage lifestyle and weight issues, or intervention groups, whether it's phone coaching or group interactions, that we actually, number one, get considerably high engagement. In fact, in one 6-month study, a researcher had 100% engagement and retention in that group that used our technology. So we've shown several times over and over again that we can affect outcomes, that we can affect behavior change, and that people will engage with technology, at least our technology. I won't speak about everybody's, but with ours they do.
Outstanding. Let me turn to Alex next. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is your toothbrush is an unusual product because every single one of us has a toothbrush already. So you're taking an activity, a practice that exists in all of us. Not all of us have a weight issue, not all of us have a problem with asthma, but every one of us has a toothbrush. And you're supplanting an existing technology, a very low-tech technology, with something very high-tech. It's a big jump, basically. And I'm very curious, when you look at that, right, what are the relationships that you believe are actually forged? What are the practices that you believe are forged by your product? How does it really relate to self-tracking in a strong way?
Yeah, so we think that that's actually, and we have this conversation a lot as a company and with the public as well. We think it's really interesting that we're asking the consumer, in our case, a pretty unique question, which is buy the same thing that you already have, but buy a new version of it, buy a smarter version of it, buy a more capable version of it, as opposed to get completely new hardware. Something new to wear on your wrist, something new to wear on your body, etc., that has a completely new function and deserves its own space. So as such, we've seen this great turnaround in many people that need an extra sentence or two to get over the hump of, well, why, right? Why do I need to go from low tech to high tech? And so part of that in our model is about explaining the environments that we can place this data in. And we see specifically the lack of relationship today between dentists and patients, which is true broadly in healthcare, but dentists can only be concerned with the patients that are physically in their office on a day-to-day basis. If we can provide a passive data collecting tool that allows people to not only create data, but put it into the professional environment, in effect, treatment planning. We can bring retention to practices, we can bring a new data stream to practices, and for us, that's a completely uncharted territory that may be the most exciting piece of our business.
Interesting. So in a way, your product's value proposition, even for the dentist, becomes forging a better collaborative relationship between the dentist
in many
and the
ways,
patients.
that's what it's about, and dentists have kind of brought that to us that we didn't even really see that at first. We thought the data would be useful to dentists, which they agree with, but dentists see it as a great way to retain patients. That's their biggest problem, right, is getting people to come in every 6 months and continue to come to see them. And if they have data that's coming that they want their patients to be sending to them every 2 weeks, every 10 weeks, whatever, that allows them to have this relationship, this passive high-tech relationship with their patients, which is completely new for the average dental practice.
Very good. All right. Well, let's turn to Shridhar. Now, you're building a blood glucose monitor that is app-connected. It's sort of a cloud-connected monitor. And what I'm curious about is the technology roadmap. When you look at what you can do in technology innovation over the next few years and how it changes the game vis-a-vis diabetes and blood glucose monitoring in general, what do you see as the tall poles that you wish to trespass?
Yeah, one of the things that we realized working with folks who have diabetes is they don't want to be reminded that they have diabetes. This is a chronic situation where for the rest of your life you have to be managing this disease, and every single day you're reminded that you can't escape this. So one of the things that we realized was there's no way we can fix this problem, at least we can't, maybe somebody else can, but in the interim, what we have to do is understand what's the best we can do to help people understand and manage their lives better. And to that extent, it's really, I have to echo a little bit about what Chris was saying, it's context, it's putting the number and the data into context, as in, I know there's a lot of correlation between dental hygiene and diabetes, so what are the different things that you can put together that create a full picture? A number is only useful if it paints a picture that gives you an idea of the trend, the behaviors that you're doing that are working, that are not working. If you're taking insulin, it's very clear. There's a number and there's an amount of insulin you have to take. But if you have type 2 diabetes and you're not on insulin therapy, then really it's diet and exercise. Well, what's working? Well, if you had a good night's sleep, does that help? If you had a bad night's sleep, does that hurt you? So the big poles that we say we have to cross are the context. The numbers have to have some meaning, and they have to give some information to the user to say, what have I done that works, and what have I done that isn't working? And in order to provide that, you need good data. So that means good data acquisition. So the seamless characteristic. There's we think scales that as soon as you step on it, magically the numbers appear in your app. So that's the seamless nature is critical because it has to be a convenient product. It's got to be connected, and it's got to provide context. And I swear the letter C had nothing to do with this. It just came up, connectivity, convenience, and I'll throw in cool as well.
4 C's, all right.
Exactly. And so that's what I have to see. It's to affect behavior change, you have to make a product that people will want to use seamlessly.
Very good. Well, you've all talked about data now, and so I'll ask a couple of general questions for everybody. Let me ask people to start queuing up if they do have questions. We'll turn the house lights up in about 5 minutes. But data has an interesting aspect to it because data can be shared and open, or it can cause balkanization. It can be a competitive advantage for companies. And of course, we know that it's interesting because you can do the razor blade thing and sell a product and then have the data become a reason to charge people monthly. Or you can make the data be free and openly shared and make the product expensive. And it's a challenge. But what's clear to me from self-tracking from the presentations we saw earlier today is that, in fact, sharing and fusing data from many different kinds of parameters and proximal types of sensors is really powerful, right? The idea of being able to take some of the activity monitor work from body media and connect that to information about toothbrushing and connect that to information about blood sugar levels is really interesting. So my question is about data sharing, and in particular, what do you think it's going to take for companies to feel that data sharing is actually a better value proposition than they may currently feel it is? Is it about legislation? Is it about technical solutions to data management and open sharing? What do you think we need for that holy grail of complete unified shared data to be possible across companies?
I think, let me start. I think there's kind of two things. And my background's in marketing and kind of consumer innovation. So I think it's got to be market pull, and that's happening. I mean, I know just in the 3 years I've been at Body Media, we had a very closed system 3 years ago. And we have a whole host of APIs now. Now, we still charge a subscription for our kind of direct-to-consumer business. But the market has kind of, if you're watching the market and you're looking at what's going on with your users and your customers, you have to follow that trend. And you know, kind of the invent of APIs, it was, you know, we thought, hey, we'll develop an API and we can just push our data. Well, guess what? Everybody else has got an API and they want us to, you know, so now it's like, who does the interface? The market's just demanding it. People want choice. They want customization. They want simplicity. And if you don't give them those choices, then you know there's not the type of engagement that we need to really affect healthcare. So I think the market's driving it, and companies sitting at this couch and other places, we're all connected. And there's companies like Qualcomm that are, you know, starting to allow that space for data, you know, to go. Because the other challenge is, where do you mash that data up? You know, do we want that in our system? Do you want it in his system? You know, well, you got to have a place for it to go. And so there's companies like Verizon and Qualcomm that are enabling those types of mashups to happen.
So that's interesting. Maybe this is a call for entrepreneurs out there who are latent, who could invent companies that actually become the right places to host the data and mash it up across
That's exactly what
APIs.
the likes of Qualcomm is they're trying to do, is to enable that, you know, that innovation when you have, you know, it doesn't have to be direct collaboration then, right? You could have, you know, someone who's got a really interesting need in the market space and might say, well, I need blood pressure cuffs and I need this data and I need lifestyle data. I can just go to the Qualcomm TuneNet hub and pull it up from there and develop an application specific to that. So
I was just making that comment to that point at lunch here in a discussion with someone, that maybe the biggest difference between MedX 2012 and MedX 2015 is that today we're working on getting all this data off the body, right? Unique streams of data, et cetera. Very, very quickly we're starting to see the need for the big data people and the analytics people to come in and start taking these unique streams of data and making them useful. And we see market demand for that already. We're going to continue to see that because people, at the end of the day, are going to want to go to as few places as possible to get as much information as possible that they consider to be high quality and useful. So I can see that being, whether it's Qualcomm, IBM's moving into this, Dell and GE, and a slew of startups as well. That's going to end up being what I think makes the mass appeal really exciting for people.
Yeah, I think I'd add one little twist to this, is that one of the difficulties in sharing data is you actually have two different camps. You've got wellness data, which is really a consumer regime, and then you have medical data, which is governed by the FDA. So again, another call to entrepreneurs out there, if you guys can help bridge that gap, that would be fantastic, because you have the consumer world, which moves very, very fast, and you have the regulated world, which doesn't. And so oftentimes there's at times a very healthy, but it's sometimes a rather unhealthy tension where you're wondering, is a tail wagging the dog here? And so that's one of the challenges I think all of us are facing, is how do you balance that? And I know that Chris, you've done a wonderful job with the Body Media, and we're learning from your experience. And but there's few people out there who if there are entrepreneurs out there who know how to help expedite this and bridge that gap, I think that's a great opportunity for someone.
yeah. He's alluding to the fact that we're a regulated Class 2 medical device.
So, in fact, you're talking about integration, but you're also talking about massive scaling. What Alex just referred to is this concept of, how do you create really large demand? And this reminds me of something. I come from robotics, and in robotics, I have a constant onslaught of prognostications from experts, quasi-experts, and pseudo-experts saying the singularity is coming. What's going to happen is computers are going to get so fast that suddenly robotics is going to become great. And instead of things that kind of teeter and fall over, they're going to be fantastic androids that best us all, and underemployment becomes a fashionable way of life, basically. So we're talking always about this singularity in robotics, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen, and some of my colleagues want it to happen. If I look at self-tracking, I can ask the same question. What are the technological innovations that would cause a sort of singularity explosion in self-tracking? And what I mean by that is, today we are, in a sense, the minority. Even in spite of the Pew Internet research results, the number of people who are using these kinds of sophisticated devices is certainly a minority. What does it take technologically? What is the innovation roadmap we need to see a complete switch, where the number of people using these is everybody who's using a toothbrush today?
Personally, I would really like to see something happen at the federal level. For example, there's the National Health and Nutrition Survey, which has been going on for decades. It's a population representative survey of health and all kinds of biomarkers and so forth, anthropometrics. I would love to see a public front end to that, so that there could actually be a contribution of data to the effort that CDC and the National Center for Health Statistics makes, and sort of a skeleton or a framework put around self-tracking that gives it some larger meaning. So I think it's important to connect what the individual is doing with something larger and more meaningful than themselves, and we haven't seen that yet.
That reminds me, the challenge of visualization at a national level reminds me of work I saw done by a couple of companies in Pittsburgh. I'm forgetting the name now, but they were overlaying things like asthma rates, voting characteristics, and house taxes, and how far behind people are in terms of debt payments on top of the city map. What was interesting about that is that you're creating this kind of epidemiological social justice model that allows you to visualize statistics that make you aware that policy decisions matter at the federal and civic level. In a way, I think what you're suggesting is if we could visualize, not aggregate, but specific stories in a national way, then people understand the veracity, the importance of everything that's being collected.
Yeah, I was just talking with someone at lunch about this. When my mom passed away, I looked for a way to donate her medical record, essentially the accumulation of genomic chemotherapeutic data and information that she'd amassed in great quantities. But there was really nothing to be done with all of that information, which is sort of structured self-tracking, atomically at the end of her life. And could potentially be meaningful and valuable, but there was really just nowhere for it to go. We could do something with her body. We could donate that for investigation, but we couldn't do anything with this giant cloud of data that she'd accumulated.
It's interesting. Maybe if we could perceive value in the data and understand that value as a society, then we would see the need to relate to the fact that it has value and do something honorable with it. Let's please turn up some of the house lights so that we can get questions and actually see people in the audience. That'll be fun. While people are coming up to the microphones, let me ask one more question, which has to do with machine learning. I've come from a world where people are working really hard to try and make sense of data by using really advanced data mining and machine learning techniques. How important is that to self-tracking succeeding?
I think it's huge. We were actually founded by artificial intelligence machine learning PhD out of Carnegie Mellon.
Astro Teller.
Astro Teller, yes. If you've not ever Googled Astro Teller, write his name down. 2 L's in Teller. A very forward-thinking man who kind of predicted in body sensing space where we are today. He predicted it in 1999 when he started the company. And his belief is that machine learning allows us, that's where you start to get the personalization, and that's where you start to get the richer understanding of the behavior change, that it's not just about the same thing every day. It's like as we have more information about a person, not about people in aggregate, but about a person, we can get smarter and smarter and smarter from day 1 to day 30 to day 360. And that's kind of been how we've seen the category start to progress over the years as well. I think it's huge.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that if you look at all the technological advances that we've had, anywhere from airplanes to even automobiles, all that is enabled because you have very good algorithms and very good models that govern how these systems work. I think we're in the infancy of modeling our own bodies. And so without machine learning and more sophisticated algorithms and modeling technologies out there, we're not really going to get to the root of what makes us tick. Now, what we're doing here is we're collecting data. At some point, we translate this into what could be a therapy, whether it's a physical or biological or molecular or a chemical therapy. It all becomes part of connecting the inputs and the outputs together. And it's only possible if you can engage with machine learning and advanced signal analysis and modeling types of approaches. So that's where we're heading. So
I'm curious if you see any train wrecks along the way in the sense of you're collecting more data than a person can possibly wade through. Do you ever sense that, for instance, with the glucose monitor, that you're collecting so much, or with the asthma information, it's actually just too much for a human being to make sense of?
I think that's something that companies that are going to fail in this space, it's going to be because they're not using the consumer perspective lens. having that as the primary factor for how people actually want to receive and see data is really critical. And we've already seen, I think, some products, digital and hardware-based, over the past few years that are so busy that it takes so long to interpret. You have to be a real quantified selfer. I mean, you have to be really interested in having lots and lots of data.
Right.
Yeah, no offense to anyone out there. Because I'm like that, I can sit there and look at the streams all day, but you have to put on a different lens, and the lens for the typical person when you're looking at how to commercialize something that can be a mass appeal product.
David, do you have any thoughts about this information overload challenge with asthma?
I'm not concerned about it yet. Actually, I'm pretty excited to build the public health data layer. I want to see, and in fact, I'm talking tomorrow, and one of the things I'm going to talk about is the need for variability. What concerns me more than anything is the sampling problem of if we end up with a fraction demographically using our stuff, then we lose the ability, the requirement in epidemiology to have variability, because if you don't have variation, you don't learn anything, essentially. And so we're not there yet in terms of asthma. We have tons of places to go and an enormous amount to learn. So
the more information, the better.
yeah, I'm excited.
Excellent. All right. Well, we have a question on the right here. First on the back. Okay,
Sure.
back left.
My name is Amish. I'm Director of Innovation at Triple Ring Technologies, which is a private R&D lab. I'm also a faculty member and colleague of Astro Tellers at Singularity University. The question I have is this, and I'm trying to ask it without passing a value judgment because I don't think there is one. But on one end of a spectrum is consumerized devices. Clearly, I'm a consumer like all of us in this room. On the other end of a spectrum is a class 3 medical device, a CT scanner, some medical imaging system that's putting energy into somebody's body. Right? We're seeing lots of activity on the consumer side, a little bit of activity on the medical side. I'd like all of you, if you could, to kind of build on that a little bit. Is there a way that we can aid the transition to get maybe a CT scanner into this realm?
Well, we're a class 2 medical device, so we just received clearance earlier this summer for the apps and the patient and physician website and the sensor, and it's all class 2 medical device. I can't imagine the requirement for a quantified self-CT scanner, but I don't think I want to make that pitch for funding. We have this photo of our submission, and it was a significant amount of work to pull that together, and I'm assuming it was for you guys too.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting idea, and perhaps there's a way to build technologies that would allow us to capture more clinical data directly for the consumer application. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I guess I've had a lot of entrepreneurs come and ask me and pitch apps to me and say, hey, is this consumer enough? Can I avoid the FDA with this? How do I work around the FDA? And my response to that was, wait a minute, you're thinking about this all wrong. You should embrace the FDA. If you look at it from a business standpoint, having FDA clearance is a tremendous strategic advantage. And so what I try to advise new startups is don't try to be a software company trying to do healthcare. Be a healthcare company that can do software really well. And so you just have to kind of change your mindset, because if you work within the constraints of the FDA, they're there for a reason. And in our industry, we're seeing that the FDA is increasing its bar, and that's actually good for companies like us, because it keeps the other, I shouldn't say riffraff, but I'll say riffraff, keeps riffraff out. And that's what the FDA is there for. It's there to protect all of us.
I think the only thing I would offer, and I was just reading an article on this, there was a blog post, I can't remember where I saw it, but this blogger was interviewing a mother who had a child who was chronically sick and had, I think it was asthma, but had to take blood pressure and a number of key metric measures from this child, and this mother was talking about how great these apps that she was using off of her phone and kind of, let's call it non-validated, non-FDA approved devices, yet she was entrusting the health of her child to these seemingly, kind of unvalidated, probably, I'm assuming, lower quality. And then the writer was kind of suggesting that. So I think that's the challenge, right, is how do you balance, accuracy, especially if you're entrusting the life of a loved one or a child or something like that, and you're relying on this information and trying to administer it yourself with what the FDA requires. I think I agree with Shridhar. I mean, you need to embrace it, right? It hasn't slowed my business down. I don't think it's slowed his business down. Class 2 or class 3 might be another story, but there has to be equality, because if people aren't trusting their health care to us, then I think the government has a right to say this is, we need to have some standards here.
Yeah, there's something funny about the discussion we have in self-tracking in that there's two extremal points of the lifestyle and the practices that we're looking at when we talk about self-tracking. We have this sort of chronic or sublethal or bad situations, which are in a way they're serious healthcare interventions of some kind. You might be talking about a serious asthma case, you might be talking about diabetes, and it can kill you if you do the wrong thing. And then on the other hand, we have people who are tracking to improve their quality of life. But it's nowhere near, sublethal, near lethal. It's let's brush our teeth better. Let's avoid those cavities. We put both of these under the same umbrella of self-tracking. But in fact, if you think about the interaction design of what you need from the person, the degree of trust that the person needs in the product, and the degree to which bad things can happen, disasters can strike if you're wrong, it varies tremendously. There's extreme diversity within this community. Am I correct in suggesting you're kind of on the other extreme of this?
No, that's absolutely true. And that was actually, when we were beginning the development of the beam brush, something that we saw as a huge advantage, because we knew we wouldn't have the same environment as a lot of other medical devices. And even though this is a class 1 device, people were surprised to find that out, an FDA-approved device, it still has an environment that people do not consider to be nearly as serious. And in many ways, they're right. And so it can be looked at on the lifestyle or wellness end of the spectrum if it needs to be. But it also has a foot in the clinical side, too. So we like being able to reach across the barrier. And we think that'll make people potentially more open to sharing that data, talking about it, using and engaging the product, because it's not necessarily super consequential data.
So is this precedent making? Is the fact that you guys are innovating products that in some cases can cross that barrier, fuzzy the barrier between lifestyle products that we normally think of, a sun hat that keeps me from getting skin cancer, and serious products that are healthcare devices? Is it in fact that we're fuzzying a barrier that wasn't previously thought of as so undefined? And is that blurring operation actually changing people's relationships to the technological devices?
I think in many ways, yes. I really do think that as the consumer gets more involved with their health in general, and using technology to be a big piece of that, there's going to be less and less of a distinction between what is and what is not. And that has some danger with it, because we have to always be able to qualify what is a high quality product from more of maybe an open source style product. But as those worlds become closer, we're going to see a new class of entrepreneur in this space, and we're also going to see a new way for consumers to engage their providers and just their general approach to health.
I think one corollary I'd put onto that is, I wouldn't say it's so much as blurring, but rather what we're seeing, I'm not sure which one of my panelists here said this, but we're seeing that medical devices now can have consumer-facing features. And I think that design ethic is what's probably being, you can say it's blurring those lines, because we're fundamentally on medical devices. But if you look at it, that's a gorgeous product. You wouldn't think about a medical device being gorgeous 10 years ago, and yet today we have those.
So maybe your next visit to the CAT scan machine, it can text you afterwards and have a consumer-facing side to it.
Absolutely.
Kind of cool. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm David Hansel, an investor with Exceed, and this is for Shridhar. Yep. You've taken the glucometer and made it smarter, and it can communicate. I guess my question is, do you get better outcomes? Do A1Cs drop when you shift from your old glucometer to your new iPhone-enabled one? Well,
those studies are now ongoing, and so one of the things that we found was, you have to wait obviously several months to get those outcomes, but in the short term, what we found is people test more. We've had countless number of parents who write letters and emails and tell us that, wow, my daughter tests more because she has this new device, and we just realized that, irrespective of what happens down the road, the near-term effect is that people are more engaged. And so obviously we're very hopeful that at the end we all have better outcomes out of all this. But I'm thrilled that that we have the first step out the door, which is people are testing more, people are
You're
more
selling
aware.
more razor blades. I mean, that's fabulous.
Well, we'd like to
Okay.
think that we're helping the community too. So
We'll wait and we'll find out whether the
yeah,
outcomes come.
and that's what the physicians have told us as well, is that anecdotally, folks who have used our products have come back and said, well, they feel more in control, their numbers have come in.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, there hasn't been a fully completed study to date yet, but those are the kinds of things that us and our partner Sanofi are very excited to find out about.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead in the back left.
Hi, I'm Rex Stock. I'm from Reno, Nevada. I have a small startup, and we're working on wellness and with video self-modeling as one of the main features of what we do. Earlier, we heard about the N+1 and the anonymous aspect, and then you mentioned the variability. I'm wondering if just time and place is enough information to go ahead and give us some good information, as opposed to the normal run of demographics. So it retains the anonymous factor. And is time and place enough data to go ahead and start deriving some good data that we can further on down the road, perhaps make some correlations from?
I think, if I understand the question, is the fact that we can add parametrically to the data timestamps and location stamps, does that significantly increase the inductions you can make about the data?
In the case of asthma, it's huge, right? It's not just that you get a lat long in time, but then we have all kinds of cooperating data services. So we all, instantly know all kinds of information, contextual information, climatological information, social information. We know proximity to types of businesses. We know too much information about a place at a given time. So you can go down many different kinds of inferential paths with the only restriction being that you can go down many different kinds of paths, and you have to figure out what you're gonna where you're going to rope off and invest both that person's time and your own time. So, yeah, I think it's super valuable. I don't think we quite understand exactly how that will actually help an individual at the point where we are right now. We've never had geographic data about asthma before, so we have to understand what the signal means and how it can be put to work.
Why do we have to rope off?
Well, because I only have like 5 developers, right? So there's really like
you may have a 6th over there.
There's so much time you can that they can be allocated to think through strategically how to go grab information and bring it in to help a person.
This will be the final question. Go ahead in the back left.
Oh, hi. My name is Kevin Joyner. I'm actually a nurse practitioner and a PhD student at UCSF. And one thing I'm interested in is, in the past, the relationship between the provider and the patient has been sort of, just 2 people involved. And now it seems like there's a third person or a third entity in the middle, whether you're talking about electronic medical records or devices. And to me, is the power amount, is the total amount the same, and now we're just dividing it amongst more people? Or how is that playing out?
Let me speak, because we've got some integrations going on. I think in our case, it's changing the conversation between those 2 people, right? So we have customers in the medical community, physicians who are dealing with, obesity, because it's a comorbidity to many healthcare issues. So technology can start to change that conversation between the patient and the physician. Let's talk about how active you were, how well you slept, and we can do that in a fact-based way. And when we get to the point where information like, theirs or ours can get ported in and be very front and center to a physician, it'll take it to a whole new level. Right now, it's still kind of paper and pencil, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, but it is changing the conversation. And so I don't know that it's a third person in the room, it's just it's a mechanism to drive a different conversation.
Excellent. Well, that's going to be the end of it. So Chris has the last word, and let's please thank our panel for excellent discussion.